Today's video is all about the pros and the cons of living in White Rock and South Surrey. This is one of the most beautiful parts of Metro Vancouver. It has a lot going for it, but it's not absolutely perfect, and we're going to get into all the pros and the cons right now. Stay tuned. I'm right now in White Rock, prime location to be talking about the pros and the cons of living here. And pro number one is right where I am right now, and that is the beach. One of the things about White Rock is that it's very much oriented towards the ocean in a way that many other parts of the Lower Mainland are not. And so if you're a beach lover, this is kind of the ideal spot to be. I mean, it is an incredible beach. It stretches about 8 kilometers from one end to the other. It's pretty shallow, so when the tide goes out, there's a lot of sandy beach that you're able to play on. The closer part of the shore can be rocky, some sandy bits and stuff, but it's really nice once the tide goes out. And because it is relatively shallow here, the water also gets quite warm. So in the summer months, this is one of the nicest beaches you're gonna find in the Lower Mainland. Now, this isn't, tropical white sand type of beach. We do have to put it in perspective, but for Canada and for Metro Vancouver, White Rock has one of the nice beaches that you're gonna find. And if you love the ocean, White Rock might be one of the places you should think about moving. Pro number two would be its proximity to the border. It's only kilometers from the border. In fact, I can see the United States from where I'm standing right now. It's just in the distance. And so a lot of people, if you're living in this area, one of the things that you can really benefit from is just jumping over the border and gassing up, avoiding those high taxes that we have in Metro Vancouver, or buying groceries. And one of the nicknames the Americans just south of the border have for us, I didn't realize that until I was way too old, but cheeseheads. And the reason being, cheese in the US is considerably cheaper than it is in Canada. And so buying dairy, buying yogurt, milk, cheese, those are things that a lot of Canadians do just hopping over the border. And if you're this close to the border, it's something that you can definitely take advantage of. That is going to be a lot more challenging if you're living further away from the border. And where I live in the city of Vancouver, it's definitely not something that I'd be doing because it would cost me so much time and so much money to get down here and cross the border. But if you're this close, it's definitely worth your time. Pro number three for this area is it's very family friendly. There was a time that White Rock in particular was sort of considered an area that you would retire to only. That's changed a lot, and for a big reason, I would say it's because of the kind of development that's happened in the South Surrey White Rock area. There's a lot of shops and services and amenities that have been put into this community in the last little while that caters to families in a way that many other neighborhoods do not. And so it's not only for retirement anymore, although I do think it's one of the prime spots for retirees to consider, but a lot of families consider moving out here. And frankly, I have thought about that now that I have 4 children. South Surrey becomes a lot more attractive. Your money goes a lot further. There's a lot of good schools. There's a lot of good sports teams, a lot of activities that are catering towards families, more so than you're going to find in some other parts of Metro Vancouver. So it is incredibly family friendly, and there's always something to do, especially with the beach right here. So yes, South Surrey and White Rock is incredibly family friendly. If you are a family moving to Metro Vancouver, or you're thinking of retirement, whatever the case might be, don't forget, I am a real estate agent that has helped hundreds of people move to Metro Vancouver, and I can help you too. My contact information is going to pop up right on the screen. Feel free to reach out anytime, and we can get that conversation about moving you and your family here to Vancouver. Let's get back to the video. One other big pro of living in White Rock in particular would be its relative walkability. Now, many of the suburbs of Vancouver aren't really all that walkable, but the nice thing about White Rock is that it's incredibly small. It's only 5 square kilometers, so it's a relatively small area, and it has a lot going on. You have the beach promenade, which is one major center, and then you have the town center up the hill. Now, there is a pretty steep incline from the beach up into the town center, so you do have to be somewhat fit to be able to get from down on the beach up into the town center. But in the town center itself, there is a lot going on. And these days, I would say along the promenade, it caters a lot to tourists. There's a lot of cafes and there's a lot of restaurants and ice cream parlors, a lot of businesses that are geared more towards the summer months. And then up in the town center is where you're going to find the things that really cater to the local residents more and more. That's where you're going to find the grocery stores and the banks and that type of thing up in the town center. And not too far away, you also have over in Morgan Crossing some great shopping. That's the area of South Surrey that's seeing massive amounts of development as well. And so there was a time where, you know, you wouldn't have these things locally. And White Rock was completely car dependent. You really had to leave the area in order to do the things that you'd regularly need to do. But that is no longer the case. A lot of it is within walking distance or a very short and easy commute by car. Now, lastly, I think the most important pro is the weather. I think it's the thing that drives a lot of people to live in White Rock, and it would certainly give me a reason to move here. And this is an area, it basically has the best weather in Metro Vancouver. And I did a video about that a little while ago. I'm going to link it here for you as well. White Rock and Tsawwassen are the two parts of Metro Vancouver that get the most sun and the least amount of rain, and generally have more mild temperatures than anywhere else in Metro Vancouver, and you could say almost in Canada. The only exception would be the southern tip of Vancouver Island. But let's get into the numbers. I have them here. Let me just consult. Yeah, on average, you see 1,105 millimeters of precipitation in White Rock. You get a little bit more in the city of Vancouver, around 1,200 millimeters of precipitation. So you're getting less than Vancouver, about 10% less. But where it's really, really significant, as I've always said, up against the mountains is where we see the most amount of rain. In comparison, it's less than half of what you get in North Vancouver. So North Vancouver gets, at its height, about 2,700 millimeters of rain annually. And here in White Rock, it's just 1,100. So that's an enormous difference. But not only the rain, you also see a lot more sun. And in terms of days of rain, 153.7 rainy days in White Rock. That compares to 165 rainy days in the city of Vancouver and 171 rainy days in North Vancouver. So you're looking at about almost 20 more days of sun in White Rock than you would in North Vancouver, and almost 10 more days of sun in White Rock than you see in Vancouver. So you get more sun, less rain, and milder temperatures here in White Rock, which I think is an excellent reason to be considering White Rock as one of the places you're going to want to call home. All right, so that's all the good stuff about White Rock and South Surrey, but there is some negative. So we're going to get into that now. And number one would be its reliance on the car and poor transportation, poor transit, I should say. So White Rock is one of those places that is not serviced by the SkyTrain. You are about as far away from the SkyTrain in White Rock as you could possibly be. There is an express bus that takes you from White Rock to the Bridgeport SkyTrain and also into northern Surrey, where there's a SkyTrain stop as well. But it does take at least 45 minutes in good traffic to get from here, White Rock, to either of those destinations. And then you have your commute on the SkyTrain. You are about 50 kilometers away from downtown Vancouver, and that trip can take you about 50 minutes. Now, from my house in the city of Vancouver, I don't live exactly downtown, but it took me about 45 minutes to drive out here. And that was absolutely clear traffic. There was no traffic jam whatsoever. I got over the bridge, through the tunnel in record time, frankly, and it was great. On the way back, I'm expecting there's going to be a little bit of traffic, so it's probably going to take me closer to an hour. But on days where traffic is heavy, if there's some sort of incident in the Dees Tunnel or on the bridge, if it's snowing or the rain is incredibly heavy, those bottlenecks can really back up. And so that 45-minute to an hour commute could end up taking you an hour and a half or 2 hours. And there are horror stories when the snow is really bad in Metro Vancouver that it could take up to 12 hours to get home. Now, that is an extreme case, but it is something to consider when you're thinking of moving to a location like this. And if you're thinking of doing a daily commute, can be a significant daily commute. And in a place like Vancouver, it's more significant because we are so reliant. There's so many crossings of waterways. We're reliant on those bridges and the tunnels to get from one municipality to another. Something I also talked in a previous video, which I'll link here for you, but something you want to keep in mind when you're moving this far out. There are some downsides. And as much as I talked about White Rock being one of the more walkable areas of Metro Vancouver in terms of suburbs, you are fairly car reliant in order to do anything. There's not too many jobs here in White Rock. You are likely to have to commute somewhere, whether it is further north into Surrey or whether you're going to be going into Burnaby or to Vancouver. And I would say, in my opinion, if you're commuting into Vancouver, this probably isn't the best suburb to be considering. But if you're not going to be crossing too many bridges, maybe you're going to be working in Langley or in the northern part of Surrey, I think White Rock can be an excellent option. You're going to be reliant most likely on driving to commute, but it's not going to be too bad. Driving through Surrey can be a bit tedious, but it's a relatively reasonable commute to get all the positives of living in White Rock. Another thing to be aware of about White Rock is that it is pretty much a tourist town. It is a town that just has roughly 22,000 residents. Many of the people in South Surrey would consider themselves White Rock residents as well. It's common if you're living in this part of Vancouver to be saying that you live in South Surrey / White Rock, South Surrey White Rock. But White Rock itself sees a lot of traffic in the summer months. It's a spot that a lot of people in the rest of Metro Vancouver will come to in the summer to enjoy the beach, to enjoy the promenade. And so the White Rock Promenade along Marine Drive here becomes incredibly busy in the summer months, and it is bottleneck traffic. People are fighting over parking spots. Parking is expensive if you do come down here, and you do have to have patience if you are visiting or living in this area in the summer months. So it really transforms from the winter feeling of White Rock to the summer feeling. And that is something that you're going to need to be comfortable with if you live here, that understanding that things really do shift. And especially if you live lower down on the slope and along the promenade itself, but even up along the hill a bit. Those, houses up on the hill are where people are paying a considerable amount of money to be close to the ocean, but also having a view of the water in behind and being a little bit away from the traffic. So be aware that White Rock really does shift from its summer self to its winter self. A bit like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Is that right? Dr. Jekyll and Hyde. And another thing to be aware of, one of the cons of living in White Rock, especially down on the slope or down along the promenade, is the train. And you can see in behind me the train tracks. So this is an active train track, and there are trains that run along here all the time. In fact, just as I arrived, there was a train running through here, and the bell was going. You could hear the grinding of the wheels on the metal and the engine, the diesel engine of the train. It's a significant amount of noise. And if you come here and there's no train and you think this is what it's like all the time, it's not. That train can run at night as well as during the day. So it is something you want to be aware of if you're thinking of moving here, especially if you're thinking of buying one of the houses that are right up against the promenade and along the train tracks. But even up along the slope, it is something that you can hear. It's not going to be something that everyone is comfortable with. I know that my parents, they would be driven crazy by that noise. Personally, I wouldn't mind it so much. I think it's kind of charming, and I know that I would get used to it after living here for a bit. But you are the only one that knows your own sensitivity, so I find that's really subjective, but I do think it's a con of living in White Rock and something you want to be aware of. One of the other big cons of living in White Rock, in my view, is the quality of the water. It is a different source of water. Most of the rest of Metro Vancouver uses water that comes from the mountains and is fresh runoff from reservoirs that we have throughout Metro Vancouver. But White Rock is a bit unusual in that it accesses an aquifer for its water. And so this is, rather than soft water that we have in all of the rest of Metro Vancouver, something that I love and I've grown up with, having grown up in the city of Vancouver. In White Rock, it's hard water. And so it's a very different experience in its flavor. And that's something that I would find as a negative in White Rock. I mean, I think the people that grow up here, they don't mind, they don't care. It's just what you grew up with and what you're used to. But if you're coming from somewhere else, and especially if you've been watching my videos bragging about the quality of the water here in Metro Vancouver, White Rock would be the exception. And it is something you want to be aware of if you're moving to Metro Vancouver and thinking about White Rock as a potential place to settle. All right, so the final con of living in White Rock would be affordability, and specifically the cost of housing. I mean, every single one of these that I've done, this is basically coming up as a con, and we just can't get away from it in Metro Vancouver. It is an expensive place to live. Housing in particular is expensive. I'm calling this a con, even though I would say White Rock is, it's important to note, less expensive than the city of Vancouver. So the closer you get to Vancouver, the more expensive the land generally gets. But White Rock is a bit of an outlier. So in comparison to Surrey, its neighbor, or Langley, another neighbor not too far distant, White Rock is actually fairly expensive. You're looking at about a 20% bump to go from the northern part of Surrey to South Surrey and White Rock, you're looking at prices being about 50% below what they'd be in the city of Vancouver. And I'm going to get into the exact numbers. February of 2024, typical house in White Rock was going for just shy of 1.84 million. That would compare to a Vancouver typical house being $2,570,000. And in comparison for Surrey, all of Surrey, typical house is $1,525,000. In terms of townhouses in White Rock, we see the number as $941,600 in February of 2024. You see a big jump in the city of Vancouver where it's $1,363,000. And then for Surrey, it's down again at $840,000 for a typical townhouse. And then for apartment condos in White Rock, you see the typical one going for $580,000. In the city of Vancouver, it's $813,000. The city of Surrey, it's $560,000. So again, White Rock is expensive in comparison to its immediate neighbors, but you are saving considerably compared to the city of Vancouver. And that's kind of how it compares in its situation. But keep in mind, you know, moving to White Rock is not going to be cheap. You are definitely going to be paying higher prices than these for some of the new condos that are being built. There is a lot of new development that is being built in White Rock that is geared towards a luxury type of buyer. There are older products that are not geared towards that. There's a lot of old houses. You'll see that in some of the video that I've taken of driving through White Rock. But then there's also some very, very expensive newer homes that have been built, again, towards that luxury buyer. So there's a very wide variety. You can save money and budget by buying something older, or you can really splurge and buy something really luxurious here in White Rock. Personally, I love White Rock. I think it has so much going for it. And if I was moving here from somewhere else, I'd really give White Rock and South Surrey a really hard look. There are some differences I should note between White Rock and South Surrey. For instance, White Rock is tiny. As I said, it is only 5 square kilometers, and it is surrounded by South Surrey, which has better water and cheaper taxes. And so there's a lot of people that want to move to this area that decide, I'm not actually going to live right in White Rock. I'm just going to live 1 block over in South Surrey, get all the benefits of living in this area, but not get some of that downside that I've talked about in this video. So that might be something you want to consider as well. South Surrey is a lovely area, has basically all of the pros that you see in White Rock, with a few less of the cons. And if you are thinking of moving to this area, don't forget, I am a real estate agent that's helped hundreds of people move to this area. Reach out anytime. We can talk about what's a right fit for you when you're ready to make your move to Metro Vancouver. And if you got value out of this video, please do give me a thumbs up. Smash that subscribe button if you want to see more videos just like this one about moving to and living in Metro Vancouver. And comment down below. Let me know what you think about these pros and cons. If you're thinking about moving to White Rock or South Surrey, I'd love to hear from you and love to hear what you think. And if you're a resident of this area, let me know if you think I've missed anything. I want to make sure that you also check out some of my other videos that I've done recently. This one over here is all about some of the best neighborhoods in Metro Vancouver that you might want to move to. And then this video over here is one all about the cost of living in Metro Vancouver that I think you're going to want to pay attention to if you're thinking of moving to Metro Vancouver. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on next week's video.